ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Dear Professor ABDULNASER, our scholars, our participant, our student, postgraduate student, lecturers, those who are following us in this Zoom here and also in the YouTube channel, let me welcome you to our Istac World Professorial Lecture number 28. As we have, you remember, we have started this professorial lecture almost 2 years ago, and today is number 28. During this period of 2 years, we have invited many scholars, academicians, experts, ambassadors, and even we invited the late former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, who presented one of the professorial lectures under the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization. Many of our philosophers, scholars, locally and internationally, have contributed a lot of ideas in this platform of the Istac World Professorial Lecture. Brothers and sisters, we have addressed many issues from different perspectives, and we addressed issues, some of them are of historical dimension, some of them are present dimension, and some of them of the future context. So brothers and sisters, as you all remember, and many of you who followed us for a long time, you have benefited a lot from the expertise, the scholarship of all the professors, the scholars, the dignitaries, the officials, the ambassadors who have contributed a lot to this platform. Today, alhamdulillah, we are having another professor who is a visiting international and a medical professor. He has a lot of and deep interests in the areas of Islamic civilization, history, especially the history of medicine and sciences. So, sisters, our professor today, very important topics, which is the contribution to the areas of knowledge. Topic today to our institute, the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, and to IWPL28 is very crucial, brothers and sisters. It addresses one of the most important to world knowledge and to world expertise. Usually nowadays you see many, they start actually, I don't want to say abandoning, but there is little bit less interest and focus on the contribution of Islamic scientists, physicians, scholars in different areas of knowledge. So from this perspective, we invited our professor to share some lights on the great contributions of some great Muslimization has contributed a lot to the development of knowledge, not at the local level, but at the university level, where the Islamic expertise, Islamic knowledge was in the peak at that time, brothers and sisters. So once again, I welcome you all, our Professor ABDULNASER, and also all the participants here, the scholars, the lecturers, the student, the participant here in the Zoom, and also in the YouTube channel. Please welcome, and I will hand over the session to Dr. Nurul Ain to moderate the session. Dr. Noor, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. ABDELAZIZ Berghout. Welcome to today's session, where we have the privilege of hosting the 28th World Professor Lecture. And today's lecture is entitled The Achievements of Some Muslim Physicians During the Medieval Ages, and focuses on the field of Islamic civilization, history of medicine, and history of science. Our speaker, Professor Dr. ABDULNASER KAADAN, brings with him a wealth of experience and expertise that spans decades. And Professor Dr. Kaadan currently holds the position of visiting international professor at Weber State University in Ogden, Utah, United States of America, where he teaches courses on Islamic civilization, history of medicine, and history of science. Prior to this appointment, he has held various prestigious academic positions, including Professor of the History of Islamic Medicine at Abant Izzet Baysal University in Turkey, and professor roles at Aleppo University in Syria. Well, where he also served as chairman of the History of Medicine Department. And throughout his illustrious career, Professor Kaadan has demonstrated a commitment to scholarly research and mentorship. He has supervised numerous master theses and doctoral dissertations in the field of history of medicine, history of Islamic medicine. In addition to his academic endeavors, Professor Kaadan is actively involved in scholarly organizations. He served as the president of the International Society for the History of Islamic Medicine and has been the chief editor of journal since 2012. And his very valuable contribution in the field of history and medicine are extensive and have been recognized internationally. And notably, he was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature Historical History in 2012 by the Ibn Sina Academy of Medieval Medicine and Science in India. And his publications are numerous and cover a wide range of topics within the history of medicine, from the treatment of bone fractures in the Arab medicine to the role of Arab Muslim scientists in understanding vitiligo. So without further ado, let us welcome Professor Dr. ABDULNASER KAADAN to the podium, to the online podium. Please welcome.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. First of all, I would like to thank all the people who are working at Istac for giving me the opportunity to be here. Actually, as I was talking with Professor ABDELAZIZ, I have visited Istac 2 times. The last one, it was belonged to 2007, when I extremely enjoyed my visit to Istac. And actually, I was so happy to have a look about this. I think that it is very, very important institute which interested in the field of Islamic civilization. So first of all, I would like to share my slide. Actually, so it is, you gave me the opportunity to actually share. Yes. So yeah.
You go ahead, Prof. Let's share.
Okay. So it's okay now. Can you see it?
Yes.
The slide? Perfect. So as you know that it is my presentation today is under the title Achievement of Some of Muslim Physicians During the Medieval Ages. You know that this is very, very important issue, which is related extremely to the Islamic civilization, actually. And you know that, yeah. So, and actually, all of my presentation, it will be under the title. Firstly, I would like to mention what is Islamic medicine. This is the outline of my presentation today. And then to how much extent there is a kind of recognition of Islamic medicine in Western country, and then actually would like to talk about the International Society for History of Islamic Medicine, ACHIEVMENTS, and I would like to shed light on the achievement of some of Muslim scholars in this field in Islamic medicine. I would like to take, for example, for that, Hunayn ibn Ishaq, Al-Razi, Ibn Sina, and Al-Bukaysis. So first of all, when we talk about Islamic medicine, what we mean by Islamic medicine? Very simply, sometimes some books, especially Western book, who talked about Islamic medicine, they called it Arabic medicine. And of course, why it is Arabic medicine? Because it is mostly written in Arabic language, the lingua franca of Islamic civilization. You know that during this time, during Islamic golden age, Arabic language is the language of science, exactly such as nowadays English language. And when we talk about Islamic medicine, it means that, very simply, that it refers to a system healing practices and medical knowledge which was developed during Islamic civilization, which actually lasted from or began from the 8th century until 14th centuries. And it means that also Islamic medicine concerned with the key figures which made significant contribution to medical understanding through their works, through their editions of a lot of books, and these kind of books, which or a lot of aspects of their writing remain until nowadays. A lot of physicians now, it means that it is very important until nowadays. We have different aspects of this book, which is still valid nowadays, which is still to be followed, and we would like to shed light about this subject. As you know, that Islamic golden age, it began when the Khalifa, actually Al-Mansur, he actually founded the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, and a lot of scholars came to Baghdad from different, actually, different part of the world at that time to come to Baghdad and to get knowledge from Baghdad at that time, or to contribute in actually formation of this kind of Islamic golden age. And the most important thing when we talk about to how much extent Western countries they recognize this issue. Of course, we will not ignore that a lot of Orientalists, they studied this heritage, especially Islamic medicine, which belong to something more than 100 years. They began to study it. Just like, for example, Lucien Leclerc, the French Orientalist, who was a physician, and he was concerned in the works of Al-Bukaysis, and maybe the first physician or scholar who introduced the work of Al-Bukaysis to the international community, and to actually to enable us to very closely to be acquainted with the important work of Al-Bukaysis, which we'll talk later about these important scholars. So, but even so, we should know that this is what they teach here in the United States or in West generally, like in Europe. When they talk about human civilization, they ignore what was going on during medieval age, or they called it the Dark Ages. They just shed light on Greek civilization, on Roman civilization, and then jump directly to the Renaissance, Industrial Revolution, and modern day civilization, ignoring what was going on during the especially medieval ages, which they called it Dark Age. And this is what I noticed here among the student of our university. They taught them, as I told you, in the high school, something like that. And when I began to teach Islamic civilization, because I came to America here about 7 years ago, as a scholar in the field of history of medicine. So I began to teach history of medicine, and then step by step, they recognized that. They asked me, as you are from Muslim country, so why you don't teach Islamic civilization for our students? I said, it's okay. It will be my pleasure. And to discover that, actually, it is for the first time in the Utah state here in America, teaching Islamic civilization, as I told you, it is for the first time. And I recognize to how much extent there is a kind of ignorance about Islamic civilization and what was achieved by this kind of civilization. And to correct this situation, to bridge this gap, actually they should teach their students just like this. And this is the reality, beginning by earlier civilization, not to begin by Greek civilization, because we have a lot of civilization before Greek. We have, for example, Babylonian civilization. We have old Egyptian civilization. And step by step nowadays, we discover a lot of things which is attributed to Greek people, such as Pythagoras. You know, Pythagoras actually theory. All of us actually know about Pythagoras theory in the triangle, for example. And actually, it is discovered recently that Babylonian people, they talk about this theory even before Pythagoras. So we have to recognize that we have a lot of civilization in addition to Greek. Actually, civilization, we have Persian, we have Mayan in Mesoamerica. We should not ignore it. We should teach it to our students in the level of high schools or level of universities. In addition to that, we have what was achieved by Chinese, old Indian. Then to go to the what we called it Islamic Golden Age, to actually, as I told you, to bridge this gap between the old civilization and modern civilization, which is represent civilization which was witnessed in the Middle East during what we called it medieval ages. So this is extremely very important. This issue is not limited to the Islamic civilization generally, but it is mostly also related to history of medicine. And this is very important example for that. This textbook of short history of medicine, which is considered until maybe lately in last century, is considered the Bible of history of medicine in Britain. If we take this book, which edited in Oxford University, this book actually consists of 600 pages. To how much extent do you think that this book should be fair to talk about Islamic medicine, to be fair with Islamic Golden Age? How many pages should be devoted by this book? I asked this question to my students here in America. Some of them, after they were closely acquainted with Islamic civilization, some of them, they said that it should be at least 100 pages to be devoted for talking on Islamic medicine, for example, and the achievement of Islamic medicine and the scholars of Islamic medicine. Some of them, they said it could be maybe 50 pages, but all of them, they were surprised to tell them that this book devoted for only 5 pages for talking from 600 pages for talking about Islamic medicine. At the same time, this book devoted 5 pages for talking on achievement of Leonardo da Vinci in the field of medicine. As you know, Leonardo da Vinci is a very famous artist. He painted some picture of the human muscles, human body, the muscles. He illustrated it in some pictures. So you can imagine they devoted 5 pages for Islamic medicine and 5 pages for Leonardo da Vinci. They put the same thing, all Islamic medicine equal to the achievement of Leonardo da Vinci in the field of medicine, which is completely unfair. So it means that this is to how much extent there is a kind of ignorance of the Western country regarding the achievement of Islamic medicine. Actually, after I finished my orthopedic surgery in Syria, I was extremely interested in the subject of history of medicine. And I began and I registered to get my master and my degree in history of Islamic medicine. When I had a look to this book, which belonged to our library, as you can see that it is the Library of Medical College in Halab, in Aleppo city, I was surprised about that. And I felt it is unfair at all. We have to do something to restore or at least to provide Islamic medicine to the Western country, especially scholars in this field. So I decided, after I read this book, and to see that to how much ignorance they ignore the subject of Islamic medicine, I decided to do something. And I thought to find society on the level of international level, which is called it International Society for History of Islamic Medicine. And I succeeded actually in doing that with collaboration of some of my colleagues who are also interested in the subject of history of Islamic medicine. And we founded this, I think that it is very important society, which is called the International Society for History of Islamic Medicine. We found it in Doha, Qatar, in the capital of Qatar, which is Doha, in collaboration with some scholars actually there. It was founded in the year of 2000. And my colleagues who founded it, they gave me a great pleasure and honor, firstly, to be appointed as Secretary General of this society. After that, I was elected to become a president of this society, which I think that one of the most important aims of this society is to provide Islamic medicine, especially for scholars, especially in the West. And this is why the official language of this society, it was English language. And we succeeded in publishing the journal of this society, which is the Journal of the International Society of History of Islamic Medicine, ACHIEVMENTS journal. So far, we published 36 issues of that journal. And not only of that, we actually held 8 international conferences of this society. Actually, one of these conferences, it was in Morocco. Some of these conferences, it was held in Istanbul. And the last one, it was 2 years ago, it was held in Istanbul. So actually, as the consequences of this society, we recognize that there is a kind of recognition. And we were so happy about that because, as I told you, the message of this society is to reach this knowledge to a lot of people, first of all, the people and the scholars worldwide. As a consequences of this society, we witnessed that this book, which was moved from 5 pages, actually during the 60s of last century, this one is published about something like 10 years ago, also from Oxford. And fortunately, they promoted it from 5 pages to talk about 20 pages related to history of medicine, history of Islamic medicine. We were so happy about that. Even we still feel it is unfair. It is unfair at all from 600 pages to devote 20 pages. But we were more happy to find from Oxford itself, there is a kind of books completely talk about history of Islamic medicine, which published from scholars from Oxford itself. One of them, I know her personally, Emily Savage-Smith, which is very important scholar. She is a professor at Oxford University, specialized in history of Islamic medicine. And she published with collaboration of Peter Porman, they published this book. And we were so happy in Oxford to publish a complete book related to history of Islamic medicine. Not only of that, this is another edition of the same book, actually another edition of that, and some other scholars actually also, they published a book which is related to history of Islamic medicine. Nowadays, we have actually in addition to the journal, our journal, ACHIEVMENTS journal, we have a lot of people, they are more interested, and not only general people, not only people who are interested. We have a lot of qualified people. When I was in Syria, actually, because I left my country 9 years ago, and I was the chairman of the Department of History of Medicine in Syria. I supervised on 8 doctorate dissertation related to history of Islamic medicine, and I supervised 16 master dissertation related to history of Islamic medicine. And one of the conditions to register in history of medicine department to be doctor or dentist or pharmacist. So it means that these dissertations done by specialized people, either in the field of medicine or dentistry, or in the field of pharmacology, pharmacist. So this is, I think that it is very important achievement in the field of history of medicine, in addition to tens, if not hundreds, of articles nowadays published worldwide. So let's now begin with the most important achievement related to history, which was done by a lot of Muslim scholars, actually during the Islamic Golden Age. And first of all, I would like to shed light very, very briefly. I think that a lot of people who work in the field of history of Islamic medicine, because this book is extremely important. I couldn't imagine any researcher, any scholar, he work in the field of history of Islamic medicine, he don't have good idea or to have a copy of this book, which is عيون الأنباء في طبقات الأطباء, which was written by very famous scholar. His name is Ibn Abi Usaybi'a from Damascus. Actually, this book contains biography of more than 500 physicians who lived during Islamic Golden Age, who lived until the time when Ibn Abi Usaybi'a, he edited his book until the year of 625 of Al-Hijrah. So, as I told you that this book is very important, not only because contains the most important scholars in the field of history of medicine or editors, also it contains the most important physician related to Greek civilization. For example, he talked a lot about Hippocrates, Galen, in addition to some of scholars who belong to Persian Empire. Some of them belong to Indian, actually old Indian physician. So this is extremely important. As I told you, I couldn't imagine anyone who worked in the field of history of medicine without to have a copy of this book. And by the way, a few years ago, I visited Wellcome Institute for History of Medicine, which is located in London. In London, this Wellcome Institute is extremely important in the field of history of medicine generally and history of Islamic medicine in particular. I met a scholar from Greek. He was working on translating this book into English. I'm not sure if he finished it and published in English or not. Actually, if not, I urged maybe Istac to work on this subject, because this book extremely important. And I know that in Istac, a lot of scholars, they can speak Arabic and English, very well English. I think it's not so difficult to be translated completely into English. So this is, firstly, I would like to shed light on this book because it is very important in the field of history of Islamic medicine. In addition to that, this book also, it is important, which was recently, about 100 years ago, it was published by Ahmed Isa Beg, a physician from Egypt. It is about the history of Bimarstan in Islam. Also this book, fortunately, this book, it was translated into English. It is available in digital form. I have a copy of it in Arabic language, which also shed light about the achievement in the field of Islamic medicine and to shed light about the most important PMR stance which was established in Islamic world, especially during the Islamic Golden Age. One of them, he talked about it, the Argonian PMR stand of Aleppo. The Argonian PMR stand in Aleppo. It is very important one. Why? Because it is the first hospital worldwide devoted to treat neurological problem, to treat some problem which belong to neurological issues or psychological problem. And actually, I have no idea about, I know this person, of course, because it belonged to my city, Aleppo, but the one who actually gave me an idea about that, because it was devoted for psychological problem, one time, maybe belonged to more than 25 years ago, I received a message from Italian scholars. She introduced her name to me that as psychologist, and she told me, I want some information about this PMR stand from Aleppo, because I read in my book that it is the first PMR stand worldwide, the first hospital worldwide, which is devoted to treat psychological problem. I want some information about that. I sent her some information. I taken it from Arabic and translated it into English. And by an accident, I met her in Istanbul in a very big international conference, actually, which took place in Istanbul. And her paper about the Argonian PMR stand of Aleppo, the first hospital worldwide devoted to treat psychological problem. During that time, those problems, they were in very bad treated in Europe at that time. A lot of them put in jails, a lot of them tortured, something like that. So now let's begin with some of very important scholars. I prefer to begin with this guy, Hunayn ibn Ishaq. I think he is very well known to every one of you. Hunayn ibn Ishaq, I intended to put it because he is represent the most important scholar, especially early in Islamic civilization. As you see that he belonged to the 9th century, actually, and he belonged to Islamic Golden Age. And the most important thing that he was the pioneer in the field of translation. He was appointed by the Caliphate in Bayt al-Hikmah as the chair of translators in Bayt al-Hikmah. He translated a lot of books from Syriac language, from Greek language into Arabic language. And, as you know, that he was Christian. And according to all references, he died while he was still Christian. Nobody enforced him to change his religion. This represents to how much extent, during the Islamic Golden Age, to how much extent a kind of the spirit of tolerance widespread at that time. We witnessed a lot of Christian people. They contributed in building what we call it Islamic Golden Age. A lot of them were Jewish people. Actually, also they contributed in addition to Muslim scholars. All of them, they work under the umbrella of what we call it Islamic Golden Age. And some people, they dispute why we called it Islamic medicine, for example. And a lot of physicians at that time were Christian, such as Hunayn ibn Ishaq. Some of them were actually Jewish people. And very simply to answer this question, of course, a lot of non-Muslim people, scholars, they contributed, but all of them, they work under what we call it the umbrella of Islamic civilization. Even some of them, a lot of them, non-Arabic people, non-Arab people, but we called it sometimes Arab heritage. We called it sometimes, as I told you, some books called, instead of Islamic medicine, Arabic medicine, because all of them, even Persian people, we'll see that Al-Razi is not originally Arabic. He is from Persia, from Ar-Rai city in Persia. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, is not Arabic. He is from Afshana, from what is called nowadays Uzbekistan. But all of them, they wrote in Arabic language. Why? Because Arabic language is the language of science. So this guy, Hunayn ibn Ishaq is considered, or Ishaq in Arabic, we call it Hunayn ibn Ishaq. Some English people here in America, my student, they call him Ishaq because it is written Ishaq. They say it Ishaq. So this guy, extremely important, as I told you, he was the chief of the translator in Bayt al-Hukmah. Not only of that, he is considered the first, and you know that this is taken from Encyclopedia Britannica, which describe this man, and they mentioned to very important reality that he, in the field of Islamic medicine, he moved a lot, translated some of the work of Galen into Arabic. And this work, we lost it now. The original Greek manuscript, actually, which belonged to Galen, sometime to Hippocrates, which was translated by this man, we lost it. We don't have the original work. And European people, they actually knew it through the translation of it into Arabic, and then from Arabic into Latin languages. So these give us to how much these work are very important, because as I told you, a lot of this work, we lost the original of this work. We don't have it in Greek languages or Syriac languages, but we have it in Arabic, and then from Arabic it was translated into Latin languages. And this is what's mentioned by Encyclopedia Britannica about this guy, not only as a translator. This guy, he put very important book, is considered the first isolated book related to the, what we call it now, ophthalmology, eye diseases, Kitab al-Ashr Maqalat fil Ayn, or the book on the 10 treatises related to the eye diseases, which this book, early in 1928, it was edited by Max Meyerhoff, a physician ophthalmologist who lived originally from German, but he lived in Egypt, actually, and died in Egypt. So this guy, he published this book, which about 100 years ago, which is considered the oldest separate book related to eye diseases. This is the manuscript of this book. He showed us the anatomy. He began his book by talking about the anatomy of the eye and the physiology of the eye. Now let's move to some very important. I think that all of you have get an idea about that, about those scholars, of course. So beginning by Al-Razi, or Rezius, as known in the West. You know that Al-Razi, his name Al-Razi because he was born in Al-Rai city, which belonged to Tehran. Actually, what's happened with me, a funny thing in Tehran, my first visit to Tehran, it's something belonged to 30 years ago. There was a very big conference there about Islamic medicine, and I attended this conference, and I asked them, I want to visit Al-Rai city. And they laughed. They said, I said, why you are laughing? They said that you are in Al-Rai city. It was during the time of Al-Razi, it was outside of Tehran. Nowadays, Al-Rai, it is inside Tehran, because you know that Iran nowadays, Tehran nowadays is considered one of the mega cities worldwide. It means inhabited by more than 10 million people. So this guy is from Al-Rai city, and then he came to Baghdad. As you know, that Baghdad, the capital of science at that time during Islamic world, and he worked there, and he headed the hospital there, was appointed by the Khalifa. And you know that this guy, extremely important, one of the most important figures when we talk about Islamic medicine. What I want to say, I think that we not yet studied the work of this man perfectly. We still can discover a lot of things, which is, I cannot say that may be beneficial nowadays, because you know that the theories of the diseases, which is completely different. And I would like to shed light on this reality. Some people, they believe that what is the benefit to visit, to study the work of those people, and nowadays everything is changed in our life. It is not, of course, we 100%, everything is changed, because they depend on the theory which was put it by the Greek people about the causes of the diseases, the humoral theory of the diseases, something like that, which is nowadays completely changed. But I would like to remind you that Hippocrates, who lived something like 300 BC, until nowadays is considered the father of medicine. Not because, and everything written by Hippocrates nowadays, more than 99% of these sciences is invalid, of course, which is written by Hippocrates. But even so, he is considered the father of medicine. For many reasons, I don't have a time now to shed light on these reasons. Not only of that, nowadays it is approved what they teach the medical student in Harvard Medical School, which is considered Harvard #1 worldwide. You know that. Harvard University in Boston, in the United States. What they teach their student in medicine. Every one generation, it means about 25 years. Every 25 years, 50% of the information they teach for their student, it become invalid. So it means that medicine is very quickly developed. So we cannot imagine that knowledge from more than 1,000 years ago, it is to practice it nowadays. We are talking generally. Even some aspect, it is valid until now. Some aspect of Islamic medicine. So it means the importance of to study this work. It is not only because it is valid or something like that, because we have to extract a lot of things. I would like to give you an example about that. What are the benefits of study this work of those people? Going back again to Al-Razi, as I told you that he is considered one of the most important scholars in the field of medicine. This is very famous to Al-Razi, which is painted by one of the artists in Aleppo city, which to demonstrate to how much extent he was as a clinician. He was very close to his patient. Not only actually he was interested in the philosophy of medicine. In addition, philosophy of medicine, he was very close to the bed of the patient. He was very close to what we call it now clinical science, clinical branch of medicine. And you know that Al-Razi, when we talk about him, he composed more than 200 books related to medicine, pharmacy, philosophy, etc. And also he considered by a lot of scholars as the founder of the experimental medicine. Of course, one of the most important things, Al-Hawi book. This is very book is considered until today the largest textbook written in Arabic until nowadays. This book is very important. Even unfortunately, Al-Razi died before he edited it. So this means that it was not very well arranged, as we see that if we compare it with Al-Qanon book of Avicenna. So this book, as I told you, it is the largest one. Why? Because it contained the knowledge which was gathered from Greek, Indian, and Persian medicine, and in addition to Arabian or Islamic medicine. And what Al-Razi himself, he added to his book. And this book, this is the first page of the book, which was published actually in, as I told you, it was originally in Arabic. And maybe 10 years ago, I was invited to Iran. They celebrated translating the book, in all of the book, into Persian language. And this is the complete set of the book. It contains a lot of volumes, which is about 20 years ago, it was published in Lebanon, in Beirut. This is the latest edition of Al-Hawi book. The first edition, it was published in India, actually, which belonged to something maybe 100 years ago. And this actually edition, it was done in Beirut. And as I told you, this is the most modern copy of Al-Hawi book. This Al-Hawi book need us to study it perfectly, because as I told you, the problem of this book is not well arranged. For example, when I tried to shed light on this book related to the subject of orthopedic problem, bone diseases, especially in the field of fractures, I have to do a lot of effort to gather it from different pages of this book, because it is not gathered in one chapter, such as the Canon book. It was disturbed among a lot of chapters, and then I gathered it in one chapter. So it means that we have to work on this book to gather it again, to print it again, to edit it again. So this book, this is the last page of the book as a manuscript, which is where is kept in National Library of Medicine, which is considered the one of the most important library worldwide, which is located National Library of Medicine in Bethesda City in Maryland State. Maryland State contains the oldest, in this library, the oldest manuscript located in this library belong to this guy, to Al-Razi. And I'm so happy to see it because I visited this library and to see this kept. This manuscript is kept according to very strict, actually, conditions regarding in the field of bacteriology. It is sterilized, temperature, something like that. And as I told you, it was my pleasure and honor actually to be last summer. I was in this library and I presented a presentation about Al-Razi himself, which this library contained the oldest manuscript in this library, which belonged to Al-Razi. So Al-Hawi fi al-Tibb, the most important thing that it was early during Islamic civilization translated into Latin language. Many times translated and edited. In addition to that, it was translated to Hebrew by Faraj ibn Salim. He is Jewish guy. He translated into the Hebrew language. This is the Latin translation of the book itself. And actually, many times it was translated to Latin, and it was among the 9 books in the Library of Paris, which very important to teach it for medical students during this time. And as I told you, the importance of this book, we have to study this book, and we have to ask our students, for example, especially who are preparing for master and PhD. We can give them some chapter of this book to be studied well, to analyze it, to shed light according to our knowledge nowadays. So from this book, for example, when I studied it regarding the orthopedic issues, regarding the bone diseases, I discovered from this book that what we call it now Baker cyst, which is attributed to English surgeon who called William Baker, who lived from this time to this time. This guy, he described what we called it Baker cyst. This is what we mean nowadays in our modern textbook of medicine, Baker cyst, which is usually in the popliteal fossa. This cyst which developed a kind of problem, a kind of disease, and nowadays attributed in all of our modern textbook of medicine, contributed to Baker. And this is why it's called Baker cyst. Actually, when I went back to Al-Hawi book to discover that Al-Razi, before Baker, he described this cyst. And it means that we should call it Al-Razi cyst, not Baker cyst. This is just an example. We have a lot of achievement. Those people proceeded a lot of actual Western physician in actually discovering a lot of things. And I would like now, after a few slides, to shed light about what was done by Ibn al-Nafis regarding the pulmonary circulation. All of you recognize that nowadays, our modern book, they talk about that. Ibn al-Nafis, he is the first discoverer of pulmonary circulation before William Harvey, of course. So this is just an example of that to actually to give those people credibility about what they discovered. So this is just an example about that. And in addition to that, this is what we called it actually Brock method in treatment of, the patella. I think that the patella, which is a bone in front of the knee joint, the small bone of the knee joint, we call it patella. This patella, when it has a kind of comminuted fracture, there is a kind of different kind of fracture of this patella. One of these kind is called comminuted fracture when the patella is fragmented. The best way to treat it is to remove the patella. And this is described by also a surgeon called Brock. And this nowadays in textbook, you can see this one. This is from our modern textbook, Treatment of Fracture of the Patella by Excision. This study, it was prepared in 1937 by Brock himself. And also it was published in 1946, Fractured Patella. It is analysis of 54 cases treated by excision. And nowadays, in our modern textbook, it's called Brock method of patella fracture. Look what Al-Razi said in his book, Al-Hawi. This is in Arabic, and this is translated in English. Also, he recommended to treat this kind of fracture by removing the patella itself, to remove it by excision, to make a kind of operation and to remove the patella itself. So it means that he proceeded again, Brock, maybe more than 1,000 years before him, to talk about this kind of fracture. Actually, this is just a shed light on the issue of maybe orthopedic surgery, or what you call it, fractures nowadays. So if we actually shed light on different aspects of the medicine of advocacy, we will discover a lot of things. And some of these things may be still valid until nowadays. Actually, the most important thing, which was very well recognized by Western physicians nowadays, this is book which is rated here, Kitab fil Jadari wal Hasba, a book on smallpox and measles. For the first time in history, nowadays, Al-Razi considered the first one who discovered this disease. He differentiated between the two, because before Al-Razi, it was considered as one disease. It was considered by Hippocrates, by Galen, that it is the same disease. And this is very important example, because a lot of Western scholars, they said that Muslim scholars, they never innovate anything. They just repeated about Greek or Roman medicine, not to add anything important. The answer of that, it is important to transfer the knowledge of Greek knowledge of Hippocrates, of Galen, which translated into Arabic, as I told you, they kept this heritage not to be lost, because the original work, it was lost. This is very important achievement. In addition to that, this is as an example to how much extent they added. This is very important example that they innovate a lot of things. This is just an example for that. And you know that this book also, it was published more than 150 years ago. It is Kitab al-Jadari wal-Hasb. It was published. And you know that nowadays we know that Al-Razi himself, and this is recognized by a lot of Western physicians, that he is the first guy who differentiated between the two. This edition belonged to more than 300 or 400 years ago, which is in Arabic and in Latin language. This book of Al-Razi, who differentiated, and recently it is also translated into English. Now this is the English translation of this book, the book of Al-Razi on smallpox and measles, which is originally written in Arabic language. And it was my pleasure, just recently in the year of 2000, I shed light, analyzed this, the importance, and to give very important idea about why this book was very important. I wrote about this book and published it in what's it called, the Qatar, actually medical journal, and published it in this paper. It was the original article of one of the issues of this journal, which is published in Qatar, which belonged to the year 2000. It belonged to 24 years ago. Now let's very quickly, excuse me, Noor Al-Ain, Dr. Noor Al-Ain, how many minutes I still have? Could you please let me know?
5 minutes.
Yes.
5 minutes only. Oh, this is why
Yeah.
because time is
Sure,
very...
you can add. I mean, no, it's okay.
Okay.
Like 15 minutes, yeah, 10.
15 minutes more. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. You are so generous with me. Thanks a lot. So I would like to speak very quickly. So this is Avicenna. Of course, I don't want to lose time where he was born, died, etc. Avicenna, extremely important. Why? Because he is very important. We approved his picture in the cover of our journal of the International Society for History of Islamic Medicine. You know that the canon book, when we talk about Avicenna, of course, the canon book, which is very important. And just to give you an idea how much it is important, because, and nowadays it was described by William Osler. William Osler, he is considered the most important scholars in America interested in the field of history of medicine, and he worked in Johns Hopkins University. He was the founder of this university. He described this book, the canon book, the most famous medical textbook ever written. So you can imagine that this book extremely important. Nobody doubt about that. And the importance of this book, which made him the most widespread in Islamic world, in addition to European universities until 17th century. It was number one after it was translated into Latin language. This is the translation of the canon book. Again, when this book, even well known to a lot of people, but not yet studied completely. We have to study it. This is the Latin translation of this book. And fortunately, it is recently published in these 5 volumes, completely published in English. I urged, if you don't have it in Istac, you should have it in English language. Extremely important. I think that very important to any student, especially students preparing their master and PhD in the field of history of medicine, Islamic medicine. So this is very important. And as you know that I just talked about Ibn al-Nafis, when he depends on the anatomy of, when he explained the anatomy of the canon book. You know that in the beginning of the canon book, Avicenna talked about the anatomy of human being. Ibn al-Nafis, he explained it in one of his books, Explanation of the Anatomy of Ibn al-Nafis. In this explanation, he talked about what we called it pulmonary circulation, by which he considered the first who talked about it. A lot of things we have, the Avicenna diagnosis of the pulse, cardiac drugs, and arthritis or something like that. What I would like to mention very quickly about one of the achievement of, and just to have a look about how much there is an account of ignorance about what achieved by Muslim scholars. Ibn Sina or Avicenna, in the canon book, he talked about what is nowadays called delayed splintage theory, which is attributed to Professor George Perkins. This theory, it was described in this textbook of medicine, which is considered the Bible of orthopedic surgery in Britain nowadays, this book. In this book, they considered Professor George Perkins. This is George Perkins himself. When he has a fracture in his ankle, he applied his theory, which is called delayed splintage theory. He applied it in himself. And he is considered the pioneer of this theory. I saw, according to my discussion, to my actual reading of the canon book, that Avicenna talked about this theory 1,000 years before George Perkins. And what happened that I attended a conference in Greece, in Kos Island, 30 years ago, the International Conference in History of Medicine, and I provided my paper about Avicenna as a described pioneer of delayed splintage theory. And it was approved for in front of everyone that Avicenna, he talked about this theory before George Perkins. Not only of that, I asked the chairman of the conference at that time, who was British, Mr. John Clue. I told him, Professor Clue, what do you think that to send a message to the editor of the book, of this book, to tell them that, yes, this is the book, to tell them that according to our knowledge, that Avicenna talked about delayed splintage theory before George Perkins. We sent the message and signed by a lot of participants at that time. And we sent it to the publisher of this book. And we waited until the next edition of this book. What do you think the result of that? What they did? We preferred not to change anything, but the most thing, they canceled talking about delayed splintage theory at all. They never mentioned to George Perkins, and they never mentioned to Avicenna. So this is a problem nowadays. We actually have a kind of ignorance what achieved by Islamic civilization, what achieved by Muslim scholars. Another example about Bennett fracture, which is actually described by Avicenna before Bennett. Actually, he described it in the year of 1882. This is the Bennett fracture in our modern textbook nowadays, which, as I told you again, it was described by Avicenna. You know that Avicenna, he was very brilliant when he recognized that, that I am, that my mother tongue is Arabic language. The canon book is written in Arabic language, but even so, I feel sometimes it's very difficult to understand it well. I have to repeat a lot of sentences to repeat it again and again until I understand it. It is difficult language. And Avicenna recognized that, and he published it, all the canon book, in a form of poetry, which is called Al-Urjuza fi al-Tibb, which is consists of more than 1,000 verses. He summarized all the medicine in the form of poetry, which is called Al-Urjuza fi al-Tibb. And the most important thing is Al-Urjuza is published. And he said he is considered in his Al-Urjuza the first one who talked about what we call it evidence-based medicine. This is the example. يا سائلي عن صحة يقول راجي ربه ابن سينا ولم يزل بالله مستعينا يا سائلي عن صحة الأجساد اسمع صحيح الطب بالإسناد. This is the first guy who talk about evidence-based medicine, which is nowadays extremely developed. It belonged to 1,000 years ago when he talked about this theory or this subject, evidence-based medicine. اسمع صحيح الطب بالإسناد. Okay. The last one I would like very quickly to mention Albucasis. I love this man because I studied it. My doctorate dissertation related, which belonged to 32 years ago. I got my doctorate in the field of history of Islamic medicine by studying the surgery of Albucasis, which is very important. This is the book in Arabic, which is full of surgical instrument. This is decorated by a picture of surgical instrument. This is the translation into Latin language. It was modern surgery in Europe based on this book, on the book of Albucasis. Look, it is a lot of surgical instrument. This is my book, which is published something like 30 years ago about Albucasis surgery. I put in this book the most important innovation of Albucasis in the field of surgery. We don't have a good time now to talk about a lot of these achievements by this guy, but I would like to mention that he is the first one who talked about how we can stop hemorrhage when we have hemorrhage during the operation, how we can stop it. He mentioned 3 methods, which nowadays very well known to any surgeon worldwide. And this is mentioned by this textbook, which is considered the Bible of surgery nowadays in America. They ignore mentioning to this guy why they mentioned to, for example, Ambroise Paré, a French surgeon who discovered the principle of ligation. But Albucasis, he mentioned to the ligation. You can see it's by ligation, the artery. It is a kind of to stop hemorrhage before this guy, Ambroise Paré. And he mentioned to what we call the Trendelenburg position. A German surgeon from German, Friedrich Trendelenburg, he described it. Actually, it is very, very important to recognize that Albucasis mentioned to a lot of things which is nowadays still attributed to Western mind. Surgical instrument, the most important achievement, which is still a lot of these instruments still we use it nowadays. Of course, we introduced a kind of modification of this instrument. You can see that a lot of it, which is nowadays recently manufactured now, just to imitate that of Albucasis according to the how he described it in his book, Al-Tasrif book. In conclusion, we can say that understanding history of Islamic medicine is very important thing, just to have a look about the contribution of those people. And this gives us an idea about the development of this branch of science in the field of medicine, pharmacy, and healthcare, and also which give us an idea. And the most important thing, also, it is, unfortunately, I cannot see. Yeah, it is the most important thing is to foster cross-cultural understanding and respect, enriching the global medical discourses and fostering innovation. This is very important to build the bridge with Western countries, with other Muslim countries in different actually countries worldwide, to have a look about what was achieved to restore actually this kind of civilization, how we can again to restore our role in the scientific research, exactly to imitate those people during this time. And I think that this is very, very quickly about the issue of Islamic medicine. Actually, at the end, I would like to thank you all. How can I say it? Terima kasih, right? I hope that I can say it correctly. Shukran lakum. Thanks a lot for all of you to attend. And I would like to thank especially the worker in the field of Istac, again, to give me the opportunity to be with you today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. MashaAllah.
Prof, can you stop sharing, Prof, so that we can see you? Hello, Prof. Are you there?
Can I stop share?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
stop sharing because people want to see your face. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Look, one is saying is I want to be a doctor now, mashallah. Okay. Anyone in the floor? We're opening it to questions. If anyone, before we proceed with the questions that are given to me, we want someone from the Zoom. Anyone want to ask? Okay, there's one question right here, Prof. Do you think that the Islamic medicine is still relevant? Can you give us examples which implementable today? So, as you said, Ibn Nafis, and maybe you can add some, because people think that it's no more relevant in the face of the contemporary revolution in medicine, and it should be studied under history of medicine, not practiced in medicine today. So, what is your view on this?
You know that this is actually a disputed issue. For me, you know that a lot of people who only studied Islamic medicine and not to have a look about specialized in Western medicine, you know that I studied Western medicine first. As I told you, I was orthopedic surgeon according to Western medicine, and after that, I studied Islamic medicine. For me, I don't feel that we can say that it is a lot of things, a lot, not few things, a lot of things could be valid nowadays. As I told you nowadays, what they teach in Harvard today, after 25 years, 50% of this information is invalid. So how we can talk about something happened with 1,000 years ago? So it is not at all to say that we have a lot of things. Maybe sometimes we have, but I think the most important thing, just to restore the right of those people, credibility of Islamic medicine. As I told you now, if you go to German, you will not see in their hospital say X-ray department. It is not. They say Röntgen department. Why Röntgen? Röntgen, he is the discoverer of X-ray. They are so proud of this man, celebrate this man. This is very important to restore the credibility of those people, to say that the pioneer of what we call the delayed splintage, this is an example of validity. Still, this theory, which was put it by Ibn Sina, the delayed splintage theory, until now, and it was, according to Western people, they believe that George Perkins is the pioneer of this theory, which is until today we follow it. But Avicenna 1,000 years ago, he talked about that, which is still valid. We have some of this, but I'm so sorry to say some people, they exaggerate. They say that a lot of things, many of things, which is still valid. I don't agree with that. This is the most important point. And An example for that, the delayed splittage theory.
All right. Okay, is there anyone else here wants to ask? Yeah, I received one. What are the aspects of Islamic medicine that are unique compared to contemporary Western medicine? One.
Excuse me? Could you please that question itself?
Yeah, what are the aspects of Islamic medicine that are unique compared to contemporary Western medicine?
Okay, so this is actually a very important question. I think that if we go to what we called it Islamic medicine ethics, ethics nowadays, it is very recently very well developed after what we called it the crimes committed on behalf of medicine during World War II, which was committed by German physicians to make a kind of they did a kind of research on people, normal people, and they committed a lot of crimes. As I told you, it's committed by German physician or Japanese physician. After that, the issue of medical issues, medical ethics, it was greatly developed. And if we go back to what was written, maybe 1,000 years ago, some Muslim scholars, they devoted a complete book, separate book, talking only on medical ethics. This is very important thing. And I think that Islamic medical ethics, it deserves, it's worth to devote a complete lecture or complete course to study about Islamic medical ethics. This is very important aspect if you want to compare it with Western medicine nowadays. Yeah, Ishaq al-Rahawi. Ishaq al-Rahawi is very important guy who devoted a complete book, not chapter, complete book talk about Islamic actually ethics, Islamic medical ethics.
Yeah. Actually, one of our students are doing on bioethics. Najib, do you have any question? Najib Gunjaria is doing on it. So, okay, yeah, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ain, and also thank you, Dr. Prof. KAADAN, for this nice presentation. Yes, Prof, so I have a question here. So as you know, IIUM has a campus devoted to medicine. So I was very, very surprised that, well, I might be wrong, but if I am not mistaken, they don't have anything on, well, what nowadays would fall under medical humanities. Yeah, so they don't teach history of medicine, and they don't even teach Islamic biomedical ethics. So I was quite puzzled by that. Yeah, so any idea why our own university is not doing it?
Actually, the subject of history of medicine, let's talk about general history of medicine. Nowadays, a lot of universities, especially European university, if you go to Europe, I think that nearly every medical knowledge, they devote a subject of history of medicine to teach it. Unlike in the Islamic or Arab world. Nowadays, in all Islamic countries, I recognize two important countries are extremely interested in the field of history of Islamic medicine. The first one is Turkey. In Turkey, nearly every medical knowledge, the faculty, they have a subject about history of medicine and mainly history of Islamic medicine, because also Turkish people, they are so proud about what was achieved by Ottoman physician, and they concentrate on Ottoman medicine, or at least medicine during Ottoman era. And Turkey number one and Iran number two. In Iran as well. But the rest of Islamic world, I don't think that they are interested, especially in Arab world. All Gulf countries, they never teach history of medicine, unfortunately. And you know that history of medicine is very rich, especially history of Islamic medicine. This is unfortunately. I think that maybe our message, it will be for in the future, just to persuade those people who are working on developing the curriculum of medical knowledge, maybe in Islamic world or in Arab world, to persuade them to introduce studying Islamic medicine, Islamic medical ethics in the curriculum of all of medical faculties. Yeah, this is very important issue.
Right.
Dr. Ayn, some
please.
questions in your WhatsApp.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. One is this possible to study the history of Islamic medicine without knowing Arabic? So one is asking.
Of course, of course. Nowadays, I think one of the purpose of that, our journal, we publish it in English, and our site. If you go to our site, ACHIEVMENTS.net, it is ACHIEVMENTS.net, you will find a lot of articles. Just recently, I published here in America in a plastic surgery journal what was achieved by advocacies regarding the plastic surgery in collaboration with some of my students. Actually, he just nowadays he worked in Mayo Clinic in the field of plastic surgery, and we publish it about that. It is in English. You know that our message in ACHIEVMENTS to publish everything in English to enable all the people worldwide to study it. I urge every one of you, you know, the Canon book nowadays is available in English. Nowadays, the Canon book is very important. I'm not sure, Dr. Noor Al-Ayun, it is available nowadays in your library in Istac, the Canon book.
Yeah, the Canon book. Yeah, it is available. We have it
in English. In English, the 5 volume of it in English.
I'm not sure about the volume. We do have. Yeah. All right.
If not, please. It is now the Ghazi publisher in Chicago. He used to sell it. Please, you can get contact, or you can go to Amazon to find it, and it is extremely important. Please.
Yeah. Thank you. We will get it. We also have here Dr. Fikri from Indonesia. He's also a physician, and he's doing something on I think Ibn Sina. Dr. Fikri, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Assalamualaikum
Yeah,
warahmatullahi
please.
wabarakatuh, Professor. Thank you very much, Professor. Very interesting what you present tonight. I'm a medical doctor, and I'm studying Istac, especially in the subject of neuroscience, neurophilosophy. So it's very interesting because when I read Ibn Sina, the canon of medicine, what we know today with the relation between the brain and the gut, or Ibn Sina already mentioned in his canon of medicine about the relation between the brain and the stomach. So, but unfortunately, when I'm studying medicine, there is no one footnote even mention about the book of the canon of medicine. And I don't know, maybe I'm still crazy because even in an Islamic university in Indonesia, there is no one mention about Ibn Sina in the faculty of medicine. So I think that is one of our big challenge for the future, to distribute all the books from the Islamic tradition to the Islamic faculty of medicine, especially maybe in Indonesia and Malaysia, because in here there is no mention anything about all of our Islamic scholars. Thank you very much, Professor.
By the way,
Very nice
as far as you study the neurological issues or psychological issues of Avicenna, I would like you to shed light about al-ishq disease, love sickness disease, which is very well detailed by Avicenna. I think that you can make a kind of projection about, according to our modern knowledge, regarding the psychological problem as resulted from al-ishq disease, which was very well described by Avicenna. So please shed light about this subject.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Prof. For the last question, dear Prof, are the books of Imam Bakr Razi still studying at European universities, such as the book of Kitab al-Hawitib? Because this book has been taught 400 years at European universities. Please, Prof.
So what he said, excuse me, just very briefly about the question.
He said, are the books of Imam Abu Bakr Razi still studying at European universities?
No, not yet, of course, not. Even the canon book is not still studied. But you know that when the canon, it was edited, it was maybe replaced by Al-Hawi, because it is extremely much better prepared by Avicenna than the Kitab al-Hawi, because as I told you, Al-Razi died before he actually collected it or arranged it. It is not well arranged if you compare it with Avicenna. And the methodology of Avicenna book, the canon, it's just like that the methodology which is followed by our modern textbook nowadays follows. Yeah, it is the same thing, beginning by anatomy, physiology, and the causes of the disease, the symptom and sign, treatment, prognosis, something like that.
All right. Okay, I think we've come to the end. So we thank you very much, Prof, for delivering that marvelous speech, and your insights into discoveries in medicine were truly enlightening and thought-provoking. And we've all gained valuable knowledge from your expertise. And your presentation has sparked our curiosity and inspired us to delve deeper into the fascinating world of medicine. We appreciate your time and effort in sharing your wisdom with us. Now we will give this session back to Prof. Aziz. Please, Prof. Datuk. Prof. Abdulaziz? Okay.
Rahmatullah.
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me, Dr. Ayn?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah. Yeah, at the end of this very great and informative, enlightening lecture of Professor Dr. ABDULNASER KAADAN, I think it's really wonderful to hear and to understand what Islamic medicine has left to humanity and how it was very creative. I think one thing we learned today from Professor Ayn, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Of
sure.
course, yeah. We hear you.
What we learned today from our professor is that Islamic civilization has provided the environment and the ecosystem and the learning bi'ah or environment for creativity, for people from all disciplines, from all cultures, from all religions to excel and to become great scholars. That's number one. Number two, we learned how Islamic medicine has really provided the frameworks and the environment for developing what we call today bioethics or medical ethics or anything related to dealing with the human being, not only as a physical, as a jasad body, but also as mental, as spiritual, as a wholesome human being. That's why I think one of the important things stressed by Professor is that we should be leading today in what we call bioethics or medical ethics or medical education or medical education, even science education. I think that is one thing which is still today in the Quran, in the Sunnah, in the practices of our medical, our physicists, our scholars, still today intact. When they talk about the ethics of a doctor, the ethics of medicine, the ethics of practice, how we deal with the patient, the psychology of the patient. I think you saw the examples that he brought, and you see how the doctor was leaning down and talking to the patient and dealing with the patient. This part, I think, we can do wonderful things as Islam itself as a religion helps us and encourage us to be human. Before we are physicists, we are human beings. We are people of morality, of akhlaq, of ethics. We are Khalifa on earth. As Khalifa on earth means first how you deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how you deal with people, how you deal with the environment, what values, what ethics govern your relations with the rest of the people. So I think Professor also today has shown to us how the history of medicine, and for that, for this matter, history of all Islamic sciences. You go to ophthalmology, or you go to biology, or you go to chemistry, or aerospace, or algebra, or you will find that all our ulama are really great in their values, in their ethics, in their personality, in their mind, in their innovation, in their practice, in their treatment. A very simple example, which we need to imitate, brothers and sisters, while our university is promoting integration of knowledge and Islamization of knowledge and interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, you take a scholar like Ibn Rushd, the one who wrote in fiqh, in Bidayat al-Mujtahid wa Nihayat al-Muqtasid. He was a very great alim of fiqh and usul, but he wrote a book on Qawa'id al-Tib, the rules of tib, of medicine. You know, he was a faqih, but when you read his books on fiqh, on medicine, his books for 5 centuries were the textbooks in the West. So today, the student of Istac, who are struggling to be just a student in philosophy or theology, and you have to be having that encyclopedic mind of our scholars. You know, Ibn Sina, from psychology to medicine to philosophy to religion to metaphysics, these are the things that we learned today from our professor. It was really a very wonderful lecture with the content, and he made it very relevant to us. And I think he instigated the sense of learning in us, so that we go back and we learn from our ulama and scholars. Prof, may Allah bless you, and we will and wish to invite you more and more to participate in our lectures, and we will invite you to visit us as a professor or a senior research fellow, inshallah, at Istac. And I think, I'm not sure whether you see the e-certificate on the screen. Ada Ain or Ta'ada? There is no certificate on the screen, correct?
Yes, there is. There is.
Yeah, this is the engraved certificate in wood, and we will store it for Professor until he visits us, inshallah. In the end of this event, I would like to thank you all, Professor and our moderator, Dr. Ain, all the professors, the doctors, the brothers and the sisters, the participants from Malaysia, from overseas who are here with us in the Zoom, and who are also in the YouTube channel. May Allah bless you all for attending this lecture. And with this, we end our professorial lecture number 28 with the reading of Surah Al-Asr. And after that, we have a group photo together, and then we disperse. May God bless you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Okay, I think everyone turn on their...
Can you open your camera? We can have a photo together, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wa shukran jazilan wa jazakumullahu khairan.
Yes, welcome.
We will just have a photo together. Come, let's have a photo. Ain, are you taking one? Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking one. I took
Please
one.
open your camera if you are there. We have even our Dr. Ki Lam Wong is with us here.
I'm enjoying the lecture.
Thank you. We cannot hear you, the voice.
I'm enjoying the lecture very much.
Ain, okay, you took the photo?
Okay, I got it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Sister Sima, you take also photo in case.
So I'm taking from cell phone, so it's not complete yet.
We cannot hear you, Sima.
Yeah.
I have
Okay,
taken also.
Alhamdulillah, I think that's
Yes.
really great. May Allah
Alhamdulillah.
bless you all. Thank you, Prof. We will
Amen.
keep in touch, inshallah. Assalamu
Inshallah.
alaikum,
Inshallah.
everybody.
Walaikum
Inshallah.
assalam wa rahmatullah.
Salam.
Yeah, okay. My sound was not okay. Okay, may Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you.
Inshallah.
Thanks a lot, dear sir.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you. May Allah bless you. Thank you, Prof.